So good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to our NEASC Forum, Preparing Our Students for Transition. This is a very important topic we're excited to talk about today. We're going to talk about all sorts of transitions for our students, from elementary to middle school, from middle school to high school, from building to building, bringing in students from other places, other communities, and from other language backgrounds and contexts. So we are going to cover quite a lot of territory, and we hope that we'll address all of your questions throughout the next hour. My name is Kelly Christian. I'm our Director of Strategy and Membership here at the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, NEASC. I'm joined today with Jeff Rodman, the Executive Director of NELMS, the New England League of Middle Schools, and he'll introduce himself a little bit more in just a few minutes. We're going to be moderating today's session with our 4 panelists. So I'll turn it over now to my colleague, Jeff.
Thank you, Kelly. And as Kelly mentioned, I'm Jeff Rodman, the Executive Director of the New England League of Middle Schools. We're an educational nonprofit who for nearly 50 years has been promoting middle-level best practices by providing collaborative learning experiences that support students' intellectual, academic, social, and emotional growth and success. NELMS is excited to be a part of today's webinar. We are so pleased that we have four panelists with us today with an impressive depth of experience on today's topic, preparing our students for transition. And I'd like to introduce our panelists. And today we have Dr. Peter Gillen, who is a middle school principal. Jade Gopie is an assistant superintendent. Dr. Allison Jordan-Hurtt is a principal of an upper elementary middle school. And Sebastian Olivares Lizana is a teacher, grade level leader, and curriculum coordinator. Before we start this morning's discussion, I'd like to take a moment for our guests to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Pete.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Pete Gillen. I am the principal of West Springfield Middle School in West Springfield, Massachusetts. That's a section of Western Massachusetts right outside of Springfield. We have about 1,000 students in our 6th through 8 school. And we're really lucky. Our students speak north of 20 native languages and come to us from all over the world. We have a large English learners population and a very large special education population. We have a lot of refugee students from around the world that end up at our middle school. So the transition process is one that's really important to us. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Pete. Jade?
Hi, good morning, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be here as well. My name is Jade Gopie, and I am the very proud Assistant Superintendent in the Waterbury Public Schools. In our district, we have 33 schools with 19,035 students in our district. Our district is comprised of a variety of type of schools. We have kindergarten through 5 schools. We have what we call pre-K through 8 schools. We have our middle schools for students in grades 6 through 8, and we have our high schools, grades 9 through 12. In addition to that mix of all those schools, we have magnet schools in our district as well, and theme-based schools. So again, good morning to everyone.
And Allison.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, or should I say good afternoon and good evening, because so many different countries are represented here. I am the principal of St. Augustine Academy, which is a part of the Catholic Academy of Bridgeport. It is a Catholic school with 4 campuses in Bridgeport, Connecticut. We serve over 900 students. St. Augustine serves around 200 students in grades 4 through 8. We have 2 classes per grade. If you are unfamiliar with Bridgeport, we're about 45 minutes from the Bronx, New York. We serve a very beautiful, diverse community. The majority of our students are 1st or 2nd generation. They speak a language other than English in their home and come from challenging economic backgrounds. Our families are very hardworking, many of whom attend our school with the assistance of financial aid. Our students are joyful, and the faith is at the center of everything that we do. So I'm very blessed to be a part of the magic that happens here. The majority of our incoming 4th graders come to us from our lower campus, which is about a mile away and is pre-K through 3rd grade. The goal is always to get 100% of those 3rd graders to our site. And about 70 to 80% of our graduating 8th graders feed into 2 local Catholic high schools, with the remaining moving into magnet schools or trade schools within the local public school district.
Thank you, Allison. And Sebastian.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody from Bucharest, Romania. I teach at the American International School of Bucharest. It is an international school that offers the IB program from early years through secondary. Our international school is a growing institution when it comes to fostering students and community belonging, and I'm very happy to be part of it.
Thank you, Sebastian. So I'm going to begin this morning's discussion with 3 questions for each of the panelists. And the first question is, when does your transition planning begin for students coming into your school, and who is involved? Pete?
Certainly. Our transition process begins in December of the preceding year. So for the 2023-2024 school year, we've already begun that transition process. West Springfield has 5 elementary schools that are neighborhood schools. So they're very, very different in their makeup, and they filter into our 1 existing middle school. We involve the principals of each of those 5 elementary schools, their staffs, my guidance counseling staff, my administrative team, and my clerks are part of that process.
Thank you, Pete. And next we'll go to Jade.
Good morning. The transition planning begins in Waterbury in early February. And during that time, I'll meet with the school principals of the high schools. I'll meet with the middle school principals, and we have a series of planning meetings and really plan out what that summer opportunity is going to look like for our students. But we also do hire summer coordinators to oversee our summer transition programs. So once we onboard those coordinators in March, we bring them into the planning meetings as well. So I'm involved in those meetings, the middle school principals, the high school principals. We also include our content coordinators in the areas of English and math, and our director of college and career readiness involved, because we do have a counseling and career planning component and a social and emotional learning component in our summer programs. And we also would tap into some of our student ambassadors, students who were in the summer learning opportunity the previous summer, and we bring them into some of those discussions.
Thank you, Jade. Allison?
Our transition process is all the time, every day. We're constantly reflecting on what we're doing currently and how we can improve upon it the next year, informally getting feedback from our students and our families. But the more formal planning process happens a year in advance, the summer before the transition summer. And really that entails carving out intentional time with the other site leader and some of those key stakeholders to calendar events. I really think the key to smooth transitions is relationship building. And so it's really incredibly important that myself and the site leader at our lower campus spend time together, being intentional about the activities that we're planning and putting them on the calendar. Once the school year starts, we all know it's like the engine that you can't stop. It's just going, going, going. So being intentional about carving out that time, putting it on the academic calendar, ensures it's actually going to happen. And I also find it relieves some of the stress as the year gets going.
Thank you, Allison. And Sebastian, when does transition planning begin for students coming into your school?
Just like in Allison's school, this is an all year long process. As a grade level leader, we get informed of the start of this process around April, May, when we start recruiting the student ambassadors to take part of this process. But normally we follow, we recently developed an organizing flow chart in which we start from the admissions department and the English as an additional language department to see our ELL population. Then principals and vice principals take care of enrollments. Counseling team, the amazing counseling team, works on welcoming these new students. And then our curriculum coordinators in the middle years program and the GP programs start registration with electives to then move on to the schedule explanations and developing a social, emotional, and body system for the first 2 weeks of school.
Thank you, Sebastian. And you did mention student ambassadors as part of the process. And so just to kind of follow up on that, does anyone else involve students in the process of the transition? Pete?
Similar to the other panelists, we do that as well. Our student ambassadors are the folks who give tours. They create welcome videos that are posted on our website. And they're the ones that lead the parents through our orientation night. It's not me, it's our current 6th graders that handle all of the introduction, the walking through, the explaining what middle school is like. We turn that over to our student ambassador program as well. And they take on that particular night in general, but also some of the pieces we feature on our website.
In our district, we definitely have student ambassadors. We call them our storm team. And that the storm team is our student team of role models. And so they have t-shirts that they wear it proudly. And so any student that goes through our summer, we call it our summer bridge here in Waterbury, our summer bridge program will receive the storm team t-shirt. And so similar to what Pete described, those students go on and help us plan and prepare our grade 9 orientation for the parents and the students. They are the ambassadors in those buildings. They do guided tours. They welcome new students into the building. So we call them our storm team.
And Allison?
We have SEL ambassadors, social emotional learning ambassadors, and our students use the same social emotional learning program on both campuses. And so those students travel over to the lower campus and they give presentations to all students with a focus on the 3rd graders who will be transitioning over to our campus, strengthening some of those key tenets of our SEL program.
Great, thank you. And the next question is, what are specific activities that you use to help ease the transition into your school? We'll start again with Pete.
Sorry, I lost my mouse there for a sec. So the anxious feeling that 5th graders have when they come to 6th, I imagine is a universal one. And so we try really hard to personalize the approach for kids. The first activity that happens is that I, along with a small team from our school, go to each of the elementary schools, again, starting around in December, and meet in their school classroom with each of those 5th grade groups. I answer questions. I talk a little bit about what the middle school is like. I try to alleviate them of some of those initial anxious fears right in their home classroom, starting in the winter before they come. And then a few months later in June, we do 2 things. During the school day, we bus our students to our middle school. All of the 5th graders come together for a student-led presentation through the building during the school day, so they get a chance to see what that's like. At night on that same day in June, we then do a program for our parents, which is also led by our students. But of course, I'm there and our team is there, where we walk them through some of the more academic components that may be concerning to them. We're just trying to couple some of those anxious fears that, that we may have seen from that morning. We do again a follow-up in the summer, sort of a summer barbecue for our incoming 6th graders. And then on the first day of school, we open with all the 6th graders together in one single place, so they don't need to try to find their way in our very big building when they arrive. They come to one central location, and then we take them in small groups where they need to go and walk them through their first day. So that process runs throughout the year. I imagine there's some similarities to the other panelists, but for the size of our district, it's a helpful one for our community.
Thank you, Pete. Jade?
In our district, we do have some of the similar structures that Pete has outlined with the students. for starters, it's important that we make sure that the grade 9 student schedule is accurate. The worst thing that can happen to a new student in a new school is to not have a schedule or have classes that they should not be in. And so really making sure the receiving schools are very purposeful, mindful, and checking, rechecking, triple checking the class schedules of the incoming 9th graders is critical and important into that summer transition. As part of that transition, we have what we call our summer bridge. In our summer bridge program, we have a math component, an ELA component, and an SEL. And so our students will rotate through those 3 classes every single day. We have 4-hour sessions, and Monday through Thursday. And on Fridays, we have Fun Fridays. And so all of our high schools, 5 of them here, will have this summer bridge program for the incoming 9th grade students. But on Fridays, all of the students across the district will get together and do a fun activity together, whether it be an amusement park, a museum. We take them to local colleges and universities. So not only are they building relationships with their classmates in their building, but they're also building relationships with other students across the district. In addition, we have a welcoming walk in August. Some of our schools have a team of volunteers that will go out to the homes of every single incoming freshman and do a very informal visit, say hello, meet the families, meet the students, and leave a welcome packet with them. It's a great relationship building activity, but it also brings our schools into our communities. They get to understand where our students live, where they grow up, and the dynamics of their community.
Thank you, Jade. And Allison?
So our lower campus is only a mile away, but we are still 2 very much distinct communities. And so it's really important that we build the bridge. And again, that starts with relationship building. And so the principal of the lower campus and I, we calendar out certain dates over the course of the year with the assistance of our counselors and our teams. And one of the most successful events that we do is a trunk or treat in October, where we bring all of the kids onto our campus, invite everybody to come and participate, both families from the 3rd grade at our lower campus and also the families here on our campus. I find that so much of the nerves comes from never actually having stepped foot in the building or on the campus. And so giving them opportunities to be here in the building, to feel what it is to be a student here, really gives them the opportunity to get excited about coming here. We also have the gift of being very centrally located here at the cathedral, which is the center of our diocese. And so we bus our 3rd graders here once a trimester to come to Mass with our students. And that's followed by an activity. The first 2 times they do an activity with the 7th graders, so that when they actually get here in the fall, they have a familiar face that's a leadership student on campus who they can connect with. They've already gotten to know the 7th grade team, which is on the 1st floor of our building. So already they know a handful of adults when they get in the door. The last visit, which is in the 3rd trimester, they connect with the 4th grade students. So they actually spend time in their future classrooms with their future teachers. And that really strengthens the comfortability of those students. And we know that kids go home and they tell their parents what they think, how they feel. And so if they're going home and saying, I went to St. Augustine today, it was really beautiful, it was really big, we did a fun craft, you know that eases some of the stress of the parents in that transition. We also attend their school a couple times over the course of the year. I go and visit, and my 4th grade team does too. We go and intentionally visit the 3rd grade classroom, and I usually bring some swag with me. Last year I took a pencil case and I put a handwritten note for me that said, "Can't wait to be your principal," and signed it. And I'm not gonna lie, I threw candy in there too. That's what I did. But I was very pleased to see so many of the 4th graders come very proudly with their swag bags, and knowing that they were the only kids in the building that had that particular type of swag. You know, we don't have a big budget, so we have to be very creative about what we do and how we get kids here, and mindful that we don't really have a lot of money to spend in doing that. Our trunk or treat, for example, we rely on the social capital of our amazing community. I have a family that has a food truck, and they make the most delicious Colombian arepas that you'll ever have. And so they bring their food truck here, and it's a part of community building and community strengthening. Lastly, I also meet with parents one-on-one, and I have to connect with the principal to find out which parents are particularly anxious and stressed, and that's where that relationship comes in handy, because it helps me to understand who I should prioritize in meeting one-on-one to ease some of that stress. We also have a summer ice cream social where we invite everybody to the campus to have ice cream together. Again, just an opportunity to see the building, feel the community, dispel any misconceptions. And we also have a Jumpstart summer program, similar to the summer bridge that Jade was describing. ELA, math focus, get to be on the campus for a full 4 weeks before they actually transition here. They know where the bathrooms are, they know where the classrooms are. So really strengthening that comfortability.
Thank you, Allison. I have a follow-up question for Jade about your summer bridge program. Is that for all rising freshmen or just for a group of students? And is it voluntary?
All rising freshmen are eligible to participate. It is completely voluntary. So we do start recruiting very early and messaging to families and students and also the administrators of the middle schools, because we do know that parents have summer plans, summer engagements that they're thinking of with their families, and we want to get the information out early and start to message to the families that this is an opportunity for their students. And we also do award high school credit for students who participate in our summer bridge program.
Great, thank you very much. Kelly?
And I think Sebastian, did you have anything to add on that question?
If I were to add something is, well, we also have student leaders. We equip them with leadership skills, which I'm going to talk about later. And mostly the new students meet prior to the official start of the school year. And they meet with these ambassadors who show them around the school with activities that are prepared together with counselors. And another way of engaging the community in this transition is through school nights, parent-teacher student conferences, and other events that are student-led.
Thank you so much. So we're going to transition now. We've bitten off a big topic of all transitions across the K-12 spectrum. So thank you to our panelists for speaking to all of those. And so we're going to break it down now, because we know a lot of you joining us today are particularly interested in the elementary to middle or the middle to high transition. And so I want to first direct us to the middle to high transition, notably the transition from 8th to 9th grade. So any of our panelists that would like to speak about that, I'd like to ask Jade to start us off. And you did talk a little bit about that bridge program. And when you're talking about the transitions from 8th to 9th grade, what do you think are the most successful activities that you do to ease this transition? What have you had the most success with? We all do a lot of things, but which do you think are the most impactful?
The most impactful, I think, are, for starters, the welcoming walk to the homes of the families. I think that makes a huge impact and impression on our students and our families to see their teachers, community members in their neighborhoods, knocking on their doors, saying hello. We also spend a lot of time planning the curriculum for the summer learning experience with our students. And so we meet with our math and English content level supervisors and really plan out curriculums that will be interdisciplinary between those two content areas, so that students, while they're participating in the summer bridge, we want them to have fun. So they restructure and redesign some of the learning activities to be project-based learning and interdisciplinary. So as they're moving from their math class to their English class in the summer, the students can see the thread of learning from one to the next. The SEL component is key and important to their day, every single day. They do a lot of outdoor activities, team building. We definitely embed some field games and just an opportunity for the students to get to know each other, because they'll be future classmates together in the fall, and also start to talk about some of their fears, reservations about coming into a very large high school. What we also found to be successful is we do award students a half humanities credit. So they're starting their high school career ahead of the game from their peers who maybe did not attend the Summer Bridge program. They feel academically prepared and ready because of the math and English refresher during the summer. We do spend some time talking about organizational skills, study skills, organizing their notebooks, and that has shifted a bit now with the one-to-one technology that we have. We get the students on College Board and make sure they are in their Khan Academy accounts and connecting that to the College Board. So we're trying to get ahead of the game with some of the tasks that we'll do in the fall with all of the freshmen. So they come in, they know the layout of the school, they are very comfortable with the administrators because they are there all summer, and they have this group of friends that they know and that they've been with all summer long.
Great, thank you so much. Sebastian, I know your context is much different in Romania. I think your school is a K-12 school, is that correct? So in Jade's context, students are most likely moving campuses in this transition from 8th to 9th grade, and your context is a little different. Could you talk to us about what do you think are the most successful supports for 8th to 9th grade students in your context?
Well, in this particular case, as we follow the IB program, the International Baccalaureate middle years program goes from the 6th to the 9th grade, which means that they are staying in the same buildings, but what changes is, let's say, the assessment tools. So the level of difficulty when it comes to curriculum increases. And something that's very important and that takes place in the classroom is the way that the students are presented with these command terms that are so particular to the IB, which are specific instructions which need particular guidelines into how to answer questions, how to develop their understanding of particular contents. There's an emphasis on academic rigor and writing. And most importantly is getting, I would say, help from leaders, not only student leaders, but also head of departments, when it comes to understanding what academic needs the students might be expressing.
Thank you so much. And I do want to note, we're going to circle back a little bit later this morning to talk more about supporting maybe students that have specific special needs or academic needs as they move through transition. So thank you for that, Sebastian. And we'll come back to that a little bit more as well. Pete, do you have anything to add on this topic, the 8th to 9th grade transition?
I do. For me, it's the personalization piece. I think that runs through our philosophy, regardless of the grade level. So similarly, our high school counselors and administrators come to our building, and that's where they sit and build their schedule together. Because I agree with Jade's earlier point that the worst thing that can happen is a student comes and doesn't have a schedule or it's incorrect. That's essential to avoid. So our counselors sit with those students, and it only takes a few minutes. Each appointment really is 6 minutes long. But in that 6 minutes, the student and counselor go through the schedule that's been selected online and make sure that it matches. At that same time, students with special education needs get a chance to sit with their special education liaison. And that differs depending on the level of special education service that they're receiving, whether it's substantially separate or it's simply an inclusion class. It's at that moment from 8 to 9 where they meet with that person, and that transition begins in those person's hands. The more serious the need, the longer the process. But the key is to individualize it as much as possible and make sure that that happens in the location where the student feels most comfortable, and then shift to the location where they feel least comfortable. So we start in our building and then begin to shift to the high school to get students used to making that transition.
Great. Thank you so much. So let's pivot to the transition from elementary to middle school. And we know that this is a transition that can cause a lot of anxiety among parents and families as their young children make this big jump. I'm wondering, what have you found in this area? Are there strategies with how you work with your families and communities to ease this anxiety, not so much in the students themselves, but in the parents and families? And I'm not sure, would anybody like to start with this answer? Pete? Great, thank you.
Sure. As I mentioned, we try to put it back in the hands of the students, and it's really, really powerful when in June, our students say to the new parents, we were in your seat last year and look how great we're doing. It's okay. They do address, I see in the Q&A, the grading concerns, because we do go from standards-based grading in elementary to letter and number-based grading in middle school. And it's the kids who talk about, here's how the teacher helped make this usable for us. Our student information system is an open grade book where parents can go in and see the grade book at any time throughout the year. And that makes things really, really easy, because I think the key to that is making sure there are not surprises for parents when they hit that report card time. So the parents are anxious because the building is bigger, the grading is different, the kids are getting older, and the expectation of independence grows. But to have students talk about, I'm doing this, and make sure those students represent the students in your community. It's not just your high flyers that are your student ambassador program. Your student ambassador program is representative of your community and population. That really helps parents identify with kids who are just like their own kids and helps them settle, instead of just getting it as lip service from the administrator or the teacher. Having kids present about that has been really, really helpful for us.
Thank you. Anybody else like to weigh in on that question? Sebastian?
Well, in our case, the change of building also impacts enormously the way students communicate and the way students interact with one another. They move from, let's say, cubies to lockers. They have a different classroom for every subject. There's a change when it comes to their safe zones. Also, puberty is happening. Parents are really aware of that. This implies that there needs to be a very strong social emotional curriculum when it comes to developing healthy relationships, developing academic endurance because of the standards that change in evaluations, and also starts developing effective communication. Teachers are very aware of the need to have their calendars updated, and the students are starting to incorporate new digital tools for their organization skills. So I think those are the biggest changes for families, that their students are growing up, which means that they need to be equipped with the skills to become members of this community.
I also think establishing the line of communication really early on, as my fellow panelists have said, is super important. I mean, I have the benefit of being in a very small community, and so it is feasible for me to meet with all of the parents on an individual basis. And having that direct line to the principal, I find really often eases that stress, and knowing that they can come and ask questions and I can walk them through the similarities between the two campuses, but more so the differences and what they are going to be anticipating as their child transitions here. I love the idea about using students that Pete mentioned. We leverage our existing parents who have already made the transition to bridge that gap and to speak about the transition and how they made it to the other side just fine. So I think there's great ideas being shared here. Thank you.
So we do have a few questions in the Q&A specifically about the grading transition from elementary to middle school. So for those students that might be moving from standards-based to letter grade, I know everyone's touched on it a little bit, but any more specifics about how your schools ease that transition and understanding with both the students and their families? Pete?
We provide on our website a video tutorial of what those differences are, because it's common across our town. So this is what your elementary students' report card used to look like. This is what the new report card or the grading system will look like. What we try really hard not to do is correlate this on the standards report card equals this on the number-based report card, because that's not a clear linear connection. What we try to do is simply explain they are different this is the previous one, this is what the new one looks like, and here's how you can access it and ask questions in real time, and go through that quite slowly. So that sort of tutorial of walking them through not just the grading practice, but also the tangible visual that they will see as a result of that practice. Doing those things has been really helpful, and making it available for them at any time that they have any of those questions, instead of needing to call us all the time, has been helpful. It doesn't solve every question, but it's been helpful in a lot of instances.
Anyone else like to tackle that question? Jade?
I think exactly what Pete said, communication with the families is key, and with the students to make sure they understand the changes in that transition. We have orientations where we invite the students and their families to their new school, and a lot of those things are discussed at the orientation session. There's always a Q&A. We have students there, parents there, organizations of the school, if it's a PTO or a PTA, we have school governance councils in our schools. So all of these different people who make up our school community are present and in attendance, and they help the new families with the transition from one level to the next. But we also include some of the enrichment activities that are available to students in the school. So we will have the bands playing, the drum line, we'll have tables with all of our clubs and organizations, so the students can see what opportunities are there for them, the students and their families. But also, you know, to meet the diversity of our community, we also offer translation services for our parents when they arrive to our schools, to make sure that they clearly understand the information that we're sharing, and we're being very mindful to translate anything in print into multiple languages to meet the needs of our community. So communication is key, messaging, early messaging, and continuing to follow up again and again and again.
Okay, that's a great segue into one of the questions we received ahead of time from our registrants, and I will apologize in advance. We have dozens and dozens of questions from our attendees, so we're going to try to get through as many of them as possible. I'm going to pull one out now, and then I'll turn it over to Jeff to pull out some questions as well, where we'll cover as much as we can. But on the topic of English language learners or students where their native tongue may not be English, it sounds like perhaps all four of you have good experience in this area. So how do you particularly support those students and their families? And Jade just gave us a great example through these transitions. Anyone like to start there? Maybe Pete, can I ask you to start?
Sure. West Springfield's an interesting place for us because our population is very transient. It's an extremely diverse community, but the members of our community really shift with what's happening in the world. So it's an ongoing process for us on how to make this connection. So what we've needed to do is, aside from translating documents, which is huge, we also solicit and try to hire what we call community liaisons that match the language and culture of the families that are in West Springfield. And that does change every few years. And those folks are specifically tasked with helping teach us about the culture of the students and families that we have. And similarly, helping those families navigate the process, even just the logistics of enrollment, or how do I access what's on the webinar or what's on the website, or those kinds of pieces. So the idea of the family liaison is a luxury that West Springfield has, but it's a really, really powerful one because our languages change so frequently, our populations change so frequently, and the cultural gap is often quite different depending on the year that we're in. So those folks have been invaluable in easing transition process, attending parent conferences, acting as translators. They have offices in each of our school buildings, even though it's only one or two people, so that they come and go and interact with the administrative team, and then out in the community. So it's a huge luxury we have, but we would be lost without it. And we reach out to the community to say, this position is available and exists. It does not require a certification of any kind. All it requires is somebody that's willing to help navigate systems. And that's been a big bonus for us. It's how we get through a lot of the transition that happens with families that are new to America.
Much. Sebastian?
Well, in our case, it is, an ongoing work. And normally now we've got co-teachers and an academic literacy course for those students whose English language proficiency is below standards. We have also developed access arrangements, which are a set of guidelines for EAL teachers and content teachers for allowing students to access content depending on their English language proficiency. These access arrangements are aligned with WIDA standards and IB standards, particularly focused on the BICS and CALP, which are basic interpersonal communication skills and cognitive academic language proficiency. The school is now working on a translanguaging / multilingualism policy that will allow including multiple languages in all these transitions and in welcoming students to the different school divisions.
Would anyone else like to answer that before I turn it over to Jeff?
We typically pair up new families with families from their same cultural background as sort of a liaison in itself when they start at St. Augustine. We also translate into a number of languages. I think that's just best practices across the board that you should be doing that. And it's also giving so much of your time and being willing to do that, because there are a lot of things that need navigating in our society that are very difficult, especially for somebody who's new to it. With our site in particular, we have an application process and our admissions process. We have a financial aid process. Those are very cumbersome, daunting tasks for somebody who does not speak or read English. And so it's really making sure to give of your time and making opportunities for those people to come into the office and sit down on a one-on-one basis to be able to access the things they need for their child to be successful here.
All right, Jeff.
My question is going from one building to a different building. And I know that it's an anxious time for students as well as parents, but we do have students in our school who are extremely anxious. Do you do anything special for students who have high anxiety, and transitioning even within their own school is a struggle? Pete?
We do, and again, my common theme has been individualization and personalization. And so when we have that, we offer private tours and private meetings. We usually do that during the summer or after school. I don't have the capacity to do it during the day. But in those instances, letting a kid get to see where their locker is before the big crowd comes in, or navigate the building quietly and privately, has been really helpful. In addition to sitting and having conversations with the family, so like Allison said, the luxury of getting to sit down and meet and give who's the contact person for me when I'm having a problem often lessens a lot of that anxiety. So those are some of the pieces that we do that I'm sure are common to many of the panelists, but it's that whatever works within your system to individualize and personalize is going to lessen anxiety.
Jade?
Yeah. Some of the things we do is we pair students up with a buddy if they know someone in the school, to make sure that they are scheduled with them and they can transition with them. Lunch is a huge challenge for many students. They're coming into a larger school setting, a large cafeteria, structured differently than probably what they're accustomed to in elementary or middle schools when they get to the high school. And so lunch buddies are important. But there are some times when students may need a gradual transition into the school. And so maybe they need a later start time or a half day, and gradually work themselves up to a full day of school until they feel very comfortable transitioning from class to class and being there for a full school day. making sure teachers are aware of some of the anxieties and fears of the students. It's important that they are mindful and watching out for the students in their classrooms and communicating with their school counselors. So all support staff in the building know, and they have an extra set of eyes out on certain students in the building to make sure that their transition throughout the building during the day is going as smooth as possible.
Allison? Or Sebastian?
Oh, okay. So when it comes to something that hasn't been addressed yet, we do, well, small group instructions, particularly in advisories. And a recommendation that I can make is to develop circle of impacts to prepare other students for the incoming students. It means that they are able to study, discuss in safe groups what their actions might cause to others coming. We also follow the keeping safe curriculum that teaches students about warning signs, establishing boundaries. We apply a buddy system the first weeks of school, and of course, counseling check-ins. When it comes to anxiety, that is more, let's say, constant, we follow our student care flow, which is student study meetings, which is when subject teachers flag students who are experiencing anxiety or other issues. Then we move to a student support team meetings. And depending on those meetings where we express what the students might need to be successful at the schools, both socially and academically, we might derive to individual learning plans or other types of support that might help students with anxiety.
Thank you. And Allison?
Similarly to Sebastian, we have student success plans as well. And our students who we already have identified as having anxiety come to our campus having already had those SSPs implemented at their previous campus. And so we have a team meeting right at the beginning of the year that includes the teaching team, the principal, the school counselor, the parents, and the child who's included in that process. And we create a plan for them to meet their needs and accommodations as needed to ease that anxiety. And that plan stays with them for the course of the year and follows them year after year.
Great. How about kind of going in a different direction here? Students, we used to have a number of students that would move into our district over the summer, and they've missed the spring transition and the meetings. How do you handle the students who are moving in over the summer? Allison?
Well, we're rolling admissions, so this is a frequent scenario in my life. There's an admissions process, and that involves a tour, that involves a shadow day, and the shadow day is pretty critical to that process because it gives them the opportunity to spend a full day here on campus. And this is also very reassuring to the parents, because I oftentimes tell them, your child needs to love the school as much as you love the school. And ultimately, I can tell you how great we are, but isn't it best to hear it from your kid? So we have them spend the full day with us. And in that time, we pair them up with somebody, they meet the teachers, and they become more acclimated before they even start.
We're a public school, so we have students coming in all of the time throughout the school year. When they arrive, we do have a new student orientation packet that we give to the students. It's a handbook for students, school specific, with all the details about the school, things they might need to know. And we also have one for families. And then we tap into our student ambassadors, our STORM team. If you remember, I talked about them a little bit earlier. They will pair up with the student, tour them around the building, make sure they find their classes the first week of school, make sure they have someone to sit with when they're at lunch.
Don't mind, I'll jump in here. Our hour always goes so quickly. We have so much to cover. I do want to, before I turn to final thoughts from everyone, so I'll just prep you panelists that if you have a final comment or thought to leave everyone with, we're about to do that. But we do have many questions, and so I'd feel remiss without just asking once in our Q&A about supporting students with special academic needs, special education. I'm wondering if one of you might want to comment on that a bit as you support people with learning differences through these transitions. Would anyone like to speak to that? Pete?
I'd offer that I think that that's a lot about connections. As we, this group is over 60 countries, over 900 participants. And so it's about knowing what is the connection that they need in terms of the program of the student, and making sure that that connection happens before the start date, whether it's a substantially separate special education program, whether it's a gifted and talented mathematics program, is making the connection of who do I talk to when I have a problem? Who do I communicate my child's personal needs to ahead of time, and facilitating that connection before the start date. That's the key to whatever the specific instance is, to making that go successfully, is providing that link between the program and the student before just the paperwork, or before the that first setting foot into the physical location, is having that conversation and connection take place, so the person knows, not only do I know who I need to go to, but we know each other prior to the start. That's essential, and doing that will solve a lot of problems, or prevent a lot of problems before they begin.
Thank you so much, Pete. And I think we'll have to move it to final thoughts now, as we're getting to the end of the hour. So is there a piece of advice or a key takeaway or a thought you'd like to leave with our audience today? And maybe I could start with Allison, and then we'll go to Sebastian.
I think Pete said it so many times, the personalization, the individualization is so critical. Building relationships, building bridges, relying on the social capital within your community. I mean, it doesn't have to be expensive, it just has to be creative. And there's many people that work alongside you and your team who can do this with you. You don't have to do it alone.
Sebastian?
Well, I would say just trusting students' voice, building a very strong student social emotional curriculum, which will equip them with the tools to welcome others, to take care of themselves, to know about wellness, so they can, succeed.
Thank you so much. Jade?
My final thoughts would be, we have one time to make a great first impression. And so it's important that we are very purposeful with our plan for the arrival of our students, our new students, and their families. You got to do it right. You got to do it right the first time, because that is setting the tone for the relationships that are to come with the new students and their families. Also, it's important that we always take into consideration the diversity of the families and the students, and find an opportunity to celebrate that, highlight that with our newcomers into our buildings, and make them feel welcome with translation services, opportunities, information in multiple languages. Have students and teachers present who look like them, someone that they can connect with and relate to, and immediately start to form a bond with their new school, their new leaders, and their new friends.
My final thought would be to offer consideration of perspective. I agree with everything that Jade and Sebastian and Allison have said. I'd couple that with, so often we as the school system feel like there's a lot of information that we need to give, or we want them to know. It's important to take a breath and consider the information that the parent or the student most wants to know, because oftentimes those aren't the same thing, and making sure that you address the perspective of the person that's joining is really, really important.
Thank you so much. Well, on behalf of NEASC and NELMS and all of us today, I just want to thank you so much for joining us. A special thank you to our 4 panelists. I know that I am wonderfully moved by the purpose and intentionality that the 4 of you bring to this topic of transitions. We heard so much about relationship building, about involving communities, about an individualized approach. A lot of takeaways, I think, regardless of what context you're coming from or what age level you're working with. So on behalf of all of us, again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all of you, our hundreds of participants from around the world. and we look forward to seeing you next time on May 9th. Thank you.